As the adventurers walked past the stone totems, their gaze was fixed on the pyramid temple rising out of the jungle. The lower door was sealed firmly shut, so they climbed the stairs to the top. They found a crude staircase leading into the darkness. Do they dare descend into the mysterious pit? Welcome to another Stellarian Games video. In this episode, we're going to be building a pyramid temple. This is a project that I've put off for quite a while, just simply because of the amount of brickwork that's involved in a project like this. And in the end, it was a lot of work, but I really like how this one turned out. So I hope you enjoy the video. Let's go to the crafting table and find out how it's done. Okay, for this project, we're going to start with a sheet of 1-inch XPS foam. We are measuring out a series of consecutively smaller squares for the steps of the pyramid. The bottom layer is 10 inches square, the next layer up is 8 inches square, the next is 6, and the top is 4 inches. We're cutting each of those out, being careful to have nice smooth cuts, trying not to tear any of the styrofoam, as well as having good upright cuts. Next, we are measuring a 45-degree angle. We're cutting that off, and we're going to use this as our stairway up. I lined up all of the steps on the edge and then just traced around them to get a nice stairway cut for how it would align with the steps of the pyramid. We're using a hot wire cutter to cut those out, and then trim off an 1/8 inch of each side of the stairway, leaving the center of that section. We're going to take those 1/8 inch sides off and use the center and measure that with a 1/4 inch marking, and then use a T-square to draw lines across, and we'll use those as guides as we cut out the stairs. I'm using an X-Acto knife to basically cut in the horizontal and vertical cuts, and then just cut those out so we end up with a center staircase. Next, I was using the stone cutting knife that I had built in a previous video to put in the stonework, and I soon realized that that was not going to work the way that I had intended because it was cutting a little bit too deep, and the bricks, especially on the corner, would end up getting cut out. So I resorted to just using a shallower cut with an X-Acto knife, and then coming back in with a ballpoint pen and widening out all of those cuts so that you have nice deep brickwork. The next step is using a sculpting tool and pushing in various different bricks so you end up with lots of different height variations on those bricks. And lastly, we're also going to use an X-Acto knife to cut some of the brickwork out so you end up with some missing bricks along the edge of that top row. And here's a view of how the irregularity of those bricks would look. The last layer, I didn't start the brickwork. I needed to do the cutout for the downward stair, and I extended an X-Acto knife out a little bit further so that it would be able to push all the way through the foam, at least get the point through. And I'm cutting out very carefully that top box, and this will be the descending staircase into the center of the temple. Carefully pushing out that core so we have a nice clean cut on the inside square. I'm repeating those cutting processes all the way through all of the layers, so we end up with a hollow square all the way down through the pyramid. Later on, we'll glue in stairs so that we can see the actual descending staircase all the way down. Again, using the X-Acto to cut in the brickwork. On the inside, I couldn't do the X-Acto and ballpoint pen method, so I just used a sculpting tool to add the brickwork in each of the layers descending. Now I'm using a hot glue gun to glue in some 1/4 inch blocks of styrofoam to represent the staircase descending down. I wanted this to be a pretty narrow staircase, so it'd be a treacherous descent down into the cavern. Now I'm using a chain to add some more texture to the stones. It just gives it kind of a carved out stone look to all of the different pieces. I'm using the X-Acto and ballpoint pen method to cut out these brickwork on the edge of the stairs as well. This will tie it into the overall piece. I'm also adding brickwork to the stairs themselves, and also doing a little bit of cutting and irregularity to the stairs so that it isn't so even. One of the staircases I decided to cut in half to make it more modular in the end result. Next, I'm cutting out a section of 2-inch styrofoam to be a sarcophagus entranceway, shaving it down and adding some brickwork, as well as cutting out a doorway so that this can be a doorway at a lower level of the temple. This will again be modular so that it can be removed at a later time. I'm cutting a strip of styrofoam into about 3/8 inch blocks to be used as pillars for the temple section at the top of the pyramid. Now I have a 2.5 inch square block as well, and this will be the top cap portion of the temple. On the hot wire cutter, I'm just cutting in to where I'd cut those notches in before, and then I'm adding some texturing to the edge of each of the stone blocks to make it look more rough hewn. These we're going to throw into a bucket with some stones to texture them up a little bit. Using a ballpoint pen to just add some detail work to those pillars, and then using hot glue to attach them to that cap section. I'd pre-drawn some stonework on that, as well as where those blocks needed to be laid. This too will be left modular in the final result. Now we're hitting the piece with some black Mod Podge to give it a black base coat and harden up all of the stonework and give it a little bit more rigidity. Then I'm hitting black Mod Podge on all of the modular pieces as well. And once that's dry, we're using hot glue to basically stack those sections into place. If you notice, I did a little bit of pre-painting on the stairways so that I didn't have to try to paint down into the descending staircase before I started doing the assembly. The base coat is a dark brown color, kind of a chocolate brown color, and this is a pretty heavy coat, not a full dry brush, but not a thick coat either. Then it's a lighter tan dry brush, giving kind of a sandstone look. Now I'm using a lighter gray to pick out individual bricks all the way through the entire piece and all of the modular pieces. Next up, we're using a darker gray to pick out highlights as well. The result of this does not look very good as you see it. It looks more like a camouflage pattern, which I was really not happy as I was painting. It was not very appealing. I added a black wash trying to knock that camouflage color down a little bit, but even that was not very appealing in the end result. The last step is to do a very light gray dry brush over the entire piece. This tied the color scheme well together while retaining some of that color variation of the dark and light bricks. I also used that light gray to hit the edges of each of those levels to make sure that it had some variation that you could see a little bit clearer. Now you can see it also has that modularity. You can set this up in a number of different configurations. And here's just a couple of those variations in a couple different layouts. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and the like button down below. And while you're at it, you can check out some of the other videos that I have on the Stellarian Games channel. Thank you, and hope to see you again next time.